opportunity to share my ideas related to the outcome-based education and also specifically the outcome-based learning and different approaches. As already introduced by Dr. Behera, I'm Dr. Kumar Naskar, associated in the Department of Education and Management at NITTR Kolkata, National Institute of Technical Teachers Training and Research, Kolkata, under the Ministry of Education, Government of India. And basically, we are responsible for imparting the training program for technical teachers of various level of technical education. And I think that although I am attached to the Department of Education and Management, and basically I am offering the program on management most of the times, and also some publication related to the management area and also the curriculum. I'm the faculty member of curriculum revision and development, faculty in charge of from NITTR Kolkata. And basically my background is mechanical engineering. I passed out from Jadavpur and also IIT Kharagpur. My master's from IIT Kharagpur and PhD and undergraduate from Jadavpur University. So since my inception at NITTR Kolkata, I was associated in the Department of Management, and as a result of that, I have developed a certain kind of skill and knowledge related to the management. And one such important aspect is called the pedagogical issues, which are very essential for the, the teachers, irrespective their specialization, irrespective their domain or something like that, they need to acquire. So NITTR Kolkata or NITTRs, you can say that they are the pioneer institute in imparting the pedagogical training for the technical teachers of different level of technical education sector. And nowadays we are talking about that, many aspects that to be integrated in our existing education system, starting from the school system to the higher education system, that we must address certain important things that worldwide people are talking about. And outcome-based education is one such important aspect that everybody is having certain kind of concern. Even the other day, the last day, we have attended a program. I have attended a program offered by Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology, Knockout, West Bengal. The whole day program is basically related to the outcome-based education system, some salient points, and where different people, particularly that chairman from the NBA and also other dignitaries, they have shared their views regarding the outcome-based education, some nitty-gritties, and also some important issues, how that can be aligned in our traditional education system and all that. And AICTE and Government of India has already taken many initiatives, and also that is also being reflected in our new education policy 2020, that outcome-based education, kind of multidisciplinary approach, flexibility in terms of curriculum and revision kind of things, that are some of the critical issues that is being reflected in our new policy of education. And one of the important pivotal point that entire policies or even entire education system throughout the world is, that pivotal point is called that outcome-based education. Now, in the era of globalization and traditional education system is losing its importance, as that is quite obvious that because of certain changes around the world. In today's world, everything changes very rapidly and continuously. More skills are required to work with a very fast developing technology, and education system must address to cope up with that, pace of changing of the technology and also other management process. The education institutions should produce the graduate or the pass outs to cope up with the technological development. Thus, to overcome the requirement, and it is mandatory to shift from traditional education system to outcome system. What we are expecting from the industry point of view, what we are expecting from the stakeholder point of view, is only possible if you convert our traditional education system to the outcome-based system. outcome-based system, I think many speakers have pointed out the many issues, but the ultimate thing is that what you are expecting as a stakeholder, what industry they are expecting from the student, from their industrial problem point of view, and entire education system should be focused on that. Curriculum to be designed based on that, your assessment to be designed based on that, your teaching learning should be designed based on that. So all the things are to be integrated, and entire education system to be aligned based on that outcome based philosophy or outcome based education philosophy. So in this I'll start my presentation over here. Let me share my presentation. uh, I say, although I do not have the much knowledge related to the field, but still I have developed certain kind of experience, and I am going to share with you with this particular presentation. I think it is visible.
Yes, sir, it is visible. It is visible.
Okay, fine. Now, let's talk about that. That I'll be talking about the overview of outcome-based education as given by the different experts, particularly that William G. Spatty. He is the pioneer in the field of outcome-based education, and in his book Critical Issues and Answers, he have pointed out very important issues that can be taken as a part of your outcome-based education on different sections like curriculum, then teaching learning system, then assessment and other things. And in my presentation, we'll be talking about the overview of outcome-based education, the assessment related to the outcome-based education, and finally the active learning as a part of your outcome-based learning methodology. Some important methods I will try to highlight over here. Now, if you talk about that, why does the term or what are the term outcomes-based education really mean? I hope that by this time you have understood what do you mean by the outcome and what is the essence of outcome-based education philosophy. It talks about that you will have to develop such thing that after passing out from that particular system, student will be able to do successfully at the end of their learning experience. What they have learned during that period of study, either in different level of higher education or the technical education. Outcome-based education means clearly focusing the organizing everything in an education system around what is essential for all students to be able to do successfully at the end of their learning experience. That particular definition given by Dr. Spatty, William Spatty, and his book on the critical issues and answers, published by the American Association of the School Administration. And basically, what are the issues we are talking about? Basically, as per his suggestions, we are trying to implement it. So, based on his idea, we are talking about that starting with the clear picture of what is important for students to be able to do, then organizing curriculum accordingly, developing the instruction accordingly, and designing the assessment methodology accordingly to make sure that learning utilities happen. So these are some of the integral part of that education system, which are talking about that aligning your curriculum based on that outcome-based philosophy, developing your teaching learning system or in the form of instruction, designing or appropriate instruction, selecting appropriate instruction, and also finally the assessment, both in formative and summative assessment. Particularly the formative assessment has given maximum size, and accordingly you need to design your assessment methodology such that you can assess that yes, student have achieved that desired result as a part of your outcome-based education. Now, outcome-based education, already pointed out, that is a process that involves the restructuring of curriculum, assessment, and reporting practices in education to reflect the achievement of higher order thinking or higher order learning, or the mastery rather than the accumulating of course credit or maybe the marks. it has pointed out that several key points being mentioned over here. Restructuring your curriculum. Restructuring the curriculum means the traditional curriculum that we are following, that the development of traditional curriculum has to be changed. That has to be aligned in line with that outcome-based education requirement. And by virtue of our kind of activities or my association, we have developed certain kind of outcome-based curricula for the diploma level courses for the state of Sikkim. And entire curriculum is being changed based on that particular outcome-based education, and that was very helpful for that particular college for having accreditation for various courses. So as a result of that, you need to restructure your curricula, you need to restructure your assessment process and reporting practices. Reporting practices means that it should be evidence-based. You know what their student they are doing, whether they are able to do it competently or in a desired level or not. You need to provide, or you need to collect the necessary evidence, which will prove that yes, students are in a position to able to complete the things efficiently or effectively. And practice the education to reflect the achievement of higher order thinking or higher order learning, and also mastery learning. And now higher order learning I'll be talking about in later. That higher order learning, normally our education system, most of the cases, if we talk about, we are limited to the lower order level in terms of the Bloom taxonomy. There are 6 levels. I'll be talking about that. But most of the assessment and most of the teaching learning system is basically surrounded with the first 3 levels. So that is called that lower level learning, or that is also related to the lower level thinking of the students. As a result of that, that outcome that we are expecting, that is expected by the industry and the stakeholders, that is not being achieved by our education system. So as a result of that, as per the suggestion of that outcome-based philosophy, we must also take care that higher order learning also, as and when required, depending upon the hierarchy of the technical education or education system. And also the mastery learning. Mastery learning means that that will be a permanent learning kind of a permanent behavioral change with respect to the learner. So one thing they will be learned out of it through your appropriate instructional methodology as a part of your outcome-based education, and that will be a permanent kind of things. And throughout their life, they will try to apply that sort of things in their field of work, particularly in the industrial sector. These are some of the issues which will talk about the why outcome-based education is important. One aspect is called the globalization, has brought to the clear shift from education as a transmission of expert knowledge to education as a building of learners' competencies, including the learning to learn and lifelong learning. These are some of the important things we are trying to emphasize in the outcome-based education, and as a result of that, we are shifting from traditional knowledge-based education system to the competency-based system, or maybe that in other way the outcome-based education system and outcome-based learning teaching learning system, which will ensure your development of certain competencies. Competency, you understand that as a part of your knowledge, the cluster of knowledge, skill, and attitude, and that will be reflected in their teaching learning mechanism, and as a result of that, student will develop certain kind of generic skill. That skill, one of such skill is called the lifelong learning. The student will be develop that kind of qualities after having that outcome-based education and also following that outcome-based learning methodology. That means we are going to focus on the understanding fundamentals very well and learning the new skill and competencies that would enable the student or individual to cope up with the demands of the rapidly changing workplace. That is a constant process that education system should adapt, that whatever the changes are taking place outside the world, and I mean that should be integrated in the education system so that the student will be successful in meeting their requirement. Prepare global engineers, that maybe that prepare global student in the form of technical education global engineers who will have to solve the problems and solve the challenges which are not even known today, or that will be coming. I mean that they will be developed such a kind of skill or competencies, such that unknown problem will be solved by following the step-by-step methodology, and that will be propagate through your teaching learning system, and that teacher has to take the initiative such that the student can develop their problem solving ability and also the critical thinking ability. There are a few keys to have the outcome-based education as suggested by William G. Spady. One aspect is called the clear expectation or clear set of learning outcomes around which all the systems component can be focused. At that learning outcome, you have a clear, clear objectives, that every teacher should have a clear objective in terms of that learning outcome. It has been observed that sometimes that by considering the pace of the learning or that of the student, some students are weak in the sense of learning capability. Some students are very fast in as a part of your learning capability. So the teachers can assume that only few group of students will be able to achieve all the learning outcomes, not all the students. If you are having that type of kind of expectation, accordingly you try to develop or design your teaching learning methodology. Obviously you will find out that some percentage of your student will definitely not be up to the mark in terms of their performance. But before that, if you said that 100% of your student will be able to achieve the outcomes related to the topic we are going to deliver, so definitely that your expectation will be fulfilled. And to fulfill your expectation, what are the things that to be required to practice by the teacher, that has to be practiced by them. Okay, these are some of the important aspects. One issue. Another is called the establishing the condition of opportunities within the system that enable and encourage all students to achieve those essential outcomes. That is nothing but that you need to provide the necessary support and resources so that proper atmosphere and proper kind of environment is being developed such that student will be very comfortable for achieving that outcome, and also the student teacher will also be very comfortable, or maybe to be considered as a facilitator for producing that outcome or achieving that outcomes. What exactly are the outcomes? Outcomes are actions or performances, measurable and observable, of course, that embody and reflects learner competencies. Competencies in the form of three dimensions: knowledge, skill, and attitude, or the combination of it. In using content, while they are supposed to using their content that is being learned during their class, by using that information, that will be helpful for taking certain decision or solving certain problem, or maybe the idea that they have developed during their class by following that theory or maybe the principles, and also by using that appropriate tool successfully. So these are some of the things what outcomes really means, and that will be reflected in terms of competencies, and the competencies will be that reflected in terms of the field of work by the student from the technical institutions or maybe the institutions. Outcomes are what learners can actually do with what they know and have learned. They are the tangible application and what has been learned. I mean that whatever you have learned, that has got certain kind of opportunity or a kind of scope in the field of work. That should be the approach. Otherwise, it is sometimes not possible to follow the outcome-based philosophy. So obviously, that the student will be able to apply certain kind of things in the field of work in terms of their knowledge, skill, and attitude. Definitely, you have to integrate that kind of technology. You have to integrate the kind of management process, what the industry and the stakeholder they are talking about, and they are expecting from that educational system. Then only you will find out the student will have that, will develop the necessary competency, and as a result of that, they will be able to satisfy the customer or maybe the stakeholders. Some key features: outcome-based system built with everything in a clearly defined framework of exit outcome. Exit outcome meaning at the end of their course, what will be the outcome in terms of maybe the competencies, that will be clearly identified and to be framed. That is one issue. Another is called the outcome-based education curriculum is instruction and assessment should be viewed as a flexible and alterable means for accomplishing clearly defined learning aims. This is very important aspect, that that is the aspect related to the time attached to that, the concept of time attached to that outcome-based education system and its effective implementation. Here it has been said that curriculum and instruction and also the assessment methodology, that should not be too rigid, or maybe that a fixed one. That should be very flexible and adjustment required depending upon the capability of the student, also depending upon the effort by the teachers. So they are supposed to adopt and they are supposed to implement it. Okay, and that should be defined very well defined manner, so that there should not be any ambiguity from the student side, at the same time the teacher side, while implementing it. Third point is called the time is an outcome-based system, is used as an alterable resources. As already pointed out, the time can be used as an alterable. Sometimes you can go in a very rapidly, depending upon the base of the learning, and sometimes you'll have to reduce your speed depending upon the subject, or depending upon the content that you are going to deliver. So from that particular aspect, it's not like that within a specific time you'll have to complete everything. So you will have to utilize the time based on your plan, and so that you can utilize your time effectively for achieving the outcomes, and you'll be in a position to make the students competence depending upon the needs of the teacher and student. That basically depends upon their pace of learning, or also pace of achieving the outcomes. Uh, and that point number 4 is to cover in an outcome-based system, the standards are clearly defined. I mean, that what kind of standards to be followed. For example, NBA has already identified that what will be the standards in the form of a program objective, that is called the graduate attributes, has already been pointed out, and which are very essential in case of your accreditation process. That you will have to ensure that your curriculum is being followed based on the graduate attributes, and finally your student will be assessed based on the common graduate attribute irrespective of their branches and specialization. So that's why it has been mentioned that a standard to be clearly defined and known, and the criterion based for all students. Criterion based means that assessment criterion based evaluation, normally used to say that. Criterion based reference evaluation and norm based reference. Here criterion reference test and assessment are designed to measure student performance against a fixed set of predetermined criteria of learning standards. Okay, based on which that you will be assessing your student. Okay, by following or fixing certain criteria, and your assessment methodology will be depending upon that particular one. And last point talks about the outcome-based system, focus on that increasing student learning and ultimately performance abilities to the highest possible level before they leave the institution. This is also another kind of expectation from the educational organization, that at the end of their study, their performance ability to the highest possible level as per the demand of the stakeholders. And the study has given a kind of model that is called that OBA pyramid, that is self-explanatory in nature, which talk about that to define the outcome, who talks about that integrate your curriculum accordingly based on the outcome-based philosophy, and develop and design your instruction methodology or instruction accordingly to fulfill that achievement of the outcomes. Document results or the evidence such that you can prove that yes, students have achieved the outcomes finally, which will be useful for their industries and in their field of work, and finally determine the advancement. I mean, this is a continuous process. You go on improving continuously. These are some of the issues normally that the outcome-based pyramid talks about, and yeah, the outcome-based pyramid has Spady has suggested that 5 levels of outcome-based pyramid. The first level is called the paradigm, one paradigm, and second level is called the 2 purposes, and 3 level is called the 3 premises or assumptions, and number 4 is called the 4 principles, and then 5 practices. These are called the outcome-based pyramid. The entire education system should be based on that particular outcome-based pyramid model suggested by Paddy. Now let us talk about the detail regarding the some of the key components of that outcome-based pyramid. The paradigm means that paradigm shift we are talking about that the way of viewing or the way of doing things consistent in the viewpoint and as a shift of the makes accomplishing result more important than simply providing the services. So paradigm, and we are talking about the paradigm is nothing but the shifting the direction altogether a different way. That is that outcome-based education we are talking about. The traditional education system is being shifted in a paradigm way, or the paradigm shift of your traditional education system. Okay, and such that they can accomplish the result as per the stakeholder requirement. Now, the two purposes, as clearly mentioned by that outcome-based pyramid, the two purposes is basically reflecting the success of all student and staff philosophy. That two purposes that is being basically designed by considering the success of a student and staff philosophy. Now, specifically, the 2 points related to the two purposes that ensuring that all students are equipped with the knowledge, competency, and qualities needed to successful after they exit from that educational institutions and to fulfill the demand of the users or maybe the primary stakeholders in the form of industrial requirement, fulfilling the industrial requirement, structuring and operating the institution so that those outcomes can be achieved and maximized for all kind of students. So these are called the two important aspect which is called that two purposes of the outcome-based pyramid suggested by Patna. And three key assumptions or maybe the premises talks about all students can learn and succeed by not the same day or the same way, as already pointed out, that depending upon the pace of the learning, teacher has to take initiative and teachers has to progress accordingly. And second point talks about the successful learning promotes even inner to the successful learning. Inner means that student will be developed by accepting some undesirable kind of things, that kind of things, or unknown kind of things that to be developed through your teaching learning processes. And the next point is called that institute or the schools control the condition of the that directly affect the school learning. That is called that providing the necessary support and resources which will help the student to achieve the outcome, and also which will help the teacher to achieve the outcome also by their proper teaching learning methodology. And next point is called the four principles. So the four principles, as already pointed out, Spatty in the first few slides of my presentation, that clarity or focus. That on culminating exit outcome of significance, that there should be the clarity in terms of the focus, that at the end of the educational system what we are going to achieve, understand. So in terms of identifying specific outcome, that should be clearly understood and that should be very focused. Second point of expand opportunity and support for successful learning. That you will have to accept, the different kind of learning strategy, or that to be considered as your opportunity in your teaching learning system, through which you can convert that your student will be a successful learner, or that process that you will be adopting will be a successful learning strategy. High expectation for all student, not only that high expectation for all student, that expectation from the teacher's point of view, that teachers has to take initiative that all the student will have the all expected outcome as has already been identified, depending upon the type of course. Design down, that is called that integrate different parts, or maybe that making responsible the student on their own pace of learning, or even their learning responsibility. That is called the design down, from ultimate to the culminating the outcomes. The student should be held responsible for their own learning, and accordingly you have to design your lesson so that they can develop that type of learning abilities. Example of a learning process under design down has already pointed out that learning process consists of design of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. That a part of it, that every sub-component has to be interpreted properly based on the philosophy of outcome-based education. As learning is viewed as a continuous process, the learning inside the school and that also the institute and in the community are valued and closely coordinated. These are the some of the things of the design. The learning process includes the following: integrate the subject that goes with the suit. You use individual and small group and large group and engaging them appropriately. Integrate learners in different age or a different kind of attitudinal orientation or different pace of learning. Involve student in managing their learning teaching. Them to responsibility to plan, organize, and maintain their environment. Involves teaching working together, being trained in a new teaching methods or may apply certain innovative methods in some of the classes. Address the real needs of the community and producing the useful product in terms of your pass outs or in terms of your graduate that will be satisfying the customers or the clients. These are the some of the key dimension has already mentioned the time, learning and teaching time, and the time can be considered as alterable resources. And depending upon the pace of learning, the teachers has to utilize the time properly or judiciously. Methods and modalities, that learning style teaching and modalities, you have to apply improved teaching learning methodology and also that some operating principles. That means that clarity of focus, that focus in terms of your outcome. You will have to have your high expectation and also design down. Opportunity for learning success with expand enormously in teachers apply the principle consistently and systematically and creatively and also simultaneously in the classroom. Performance standard has to be fixed and defined and to be implemented, and outcomes should address that performance standard. Curriculum and access to be structured accordingly in line with their outcome-based philosophy. And here, nothing to see. I have taken from the book of that study that there are the three broad category of outcome-based education. One is called the traditional. I mean, the present system we are following is called the traditional outcome-based education. Another is called the transition, and last one is called the transformation. Basically, our today's concern is to follow the transitional and also the transformational outcome-based philosophy to be integrated in our education system, which will directly address that some of the key issues of the outcome-based education philosophy. This is one outcome-based framework. We'll talk about from input and also finally the evaluation or assessment, and in between identification of the outcome from various level, from institute level, the program level, and also the course level. You understand that if you talk about the institute level, that to start with, it talks about the mission, vision, and also EGS means that expected graduate attributes. And if you talk about the program level, that program educational objective and the student outcome in the form of a POs, program outcome, is directly related to the identified graduate attributes as in line with that Washington Accord, and we has already fixed that one. And also the course level, if you talk about the course learning outcome in terms of COs, that should be very pinpointed at the end of the course or at the end of the class. The student will be able to do something, able to apply something, able to solve something or kind of things in that way. That you have to design. That is called that, after having that input from the industry and academia. And then there is a constant improvement in terms of assessment and also outcome. That course planning and delivery to be done based on that course outcome. Syllabus to be changed accordingly. Teaching methodologies to be modified accordingly. Learning activities to be provided accordingly. And finally, assessment tools, maybe the direct or indirect, maybe the formative and summative, to be designed accordingly. And here assessment evaluation talks about the institutional assessment and also the program assessment. And also the last one is called the course assessment. Course assessment is basically that most of the cases you need to follow that formative assessment. And in case of institutional assessment and also the program assessment, normally you have to follow that summative assessment and as per the rules and the norms. I mean that to be given by the affiliating university or maybe the affiliating authorities like State Council and the State Bureau of Technical Education education or maybe the AICTE or university. There are hierarchy that already mentioned, institute level, program level, and that program level, if we talk about the program educational objectives, and also program level, second component is called the student outcome, describe the student know and can do after the graduation. That is also program level outcome. And next one is called the course level, learning outcome, describe what the student know and can demonstrate at the end of their course. And the key is called that, what I say that, define the outcome is the key, and the curriculum and the course design are the method. I mean, the defining the outcomes is the key for changing your curriculum and design the delivery mechanism. And also the teaching methods and also learning activities and other issues to be taken care accordingly, and that to be aligned with the outcomes that you have fixed. Program educational objectives, I am not going to speak in details. Already you are in the process. I hope that some of your courses are already being accredited by other NBA or maybe the ISO or maybe that NBA, ANAC accreditation or maybe that NABET accreditation. But these are some of the program educational objectives. This is the overall objectives of by considering the objective of the overall education, which may be integrated to your specific courses. That first figure after graduation, when the student will able to perform, that will be determined by considering the program educational objectives. And the program educational objectives may be guided by global and local needs, and of course in terms of vision and institutional long-term goals. And that defining the program educational objectives, the faculty members of the program must continuously work with the stakeholders or continually collect the feedback from the stakeholders, and that to be integrated in our teaching learning system in the form of local employer, maybe the industries, and also on that academic point of view from the student or also the alumni. This is the process for developing the program educational objectives, mission, vision, departmental mission and vision, fixing the program educational objectives, program coordinator to be fixed, and board of studies and advisory board will also suggest in reviewing that particular program educational objectives and finalizing the program educational objective. And finally, we have to decide that what is the program educational objective of a particular course. Program outcomes, the second hierarchy. This program outcomes is basically already pointed out that are defined by that accrediting agency of the country like NBA, and this is quite fixed and I mean pinpointed that irrespective of the branch and specialization, the students are supposed to develop certain kind of generic skill, and that graduate attributes or the program outcomes will directly address for developing such generic skill, also that knowledge and also attitudes. And that is to be considered the profile of the graduates reached through the program objectives or after passing out from that discipline, directly associated in terms of achieving the graduate attributes. And graduate attributes already we have gone through. I hope that there are 12 graduate attributes. The OBE framework talks about that engineering education that maintain the academic standard, for maintaining the academic standard, that for designing the appropriate curricula, and also following that appropriate teaching learning practices by maintaining the 12 graduate attributes as suggested by the NP. That first one is called the knowledge base for engineering, that problem analysis, then investigation, design, use of engineering tools, individual and teamwork, communication skill, professionalism, impact of engineering, and necessity and the environment, society and engineering on society and environment, ethics and equity, economics and project management, and lifelong learning. So these are some of the generic expectation as per the guideline of the NBA or maybe that as per the standard of the international bodies like Washington ACAT. And your teaching learning system or your education system to be surrounded with that 12 graduate attributes, okay, irrespective of their branch of specialization. Another aspect is popularly useful sometimes, that complex engineering problem. Students are supposed to develop how they can solve the complex engineering problem. Understand? From general type of problem to the complex engineering problem. Not necessarily that student will be given that general kind of problem, and your teaching learning practice should be around it by kind of general problem solving approaches like that. Student will be developed such that they can develop kind of competencies such that they can involve themselves in solving some of the complex engineering problem in their field of work. There are problems that have not been completely framed, I mean, or structured. Okay, for example, what do we mean by the complex engineering problem? That particular problem is not being clearly framed and structured, and leave at least a few choices. I mean that you have different choices in terms of the solution of that particular problem, and students are supposed to select the best one by applying the concept of theory and other related issues. Understand? So this is one of the important characteristics to define the complex engineering problem. Problems may require use of law or physics, or maybe the application of certain principle or certain basic mathematical tools, or some kind of approaches to frame the problem and also suggest the solution as a part of your complex problem. Course outcome, as already pointed out, that is the last level of the outcome-based framework that are related to your course or the topic. That the student should demonstrate certain kind of observable and measurable behavior after attending that particular course in terms of their knowledge, skill, and attitude acquired through this particular course, and also through that education system or teaching learning system. And it is advised that there should be around 6 course outcome. The course outcome are stated in such a way that that can be actually measured and that can be achieved. There are different styles. I mean, specific styles for writing the course outcome is being suggested by the expert. For example, sometimes you need to use that appropriate action verb, and also specifically mentioning that learning statement. For example, some suggested action verbs that would be helpful for writing the course outcome. After attending this particular course, student will be able to compile, maybe able to identify, able to create. These are some of the good action verbs normally used for identifying, formulating the course outcome, or specifying the learning statement by using that action verb. These are the very good action verbs people used to suggest to write that in action verb. Accordingly, the student assessment to be done whether they are able to complete that sort of things as per the action verb. For example, here one thing is I'm not going to discuss. This is one thing, course outcome. Sometimes some people used to refer. They understand the knowledge or understand the fundamental, but here understand or know, able to know something or something like able to what I say that interpret kind of thing. These are some of the action verbs also used by some of the teacher or some of the educators to writing the course objective, but that are the not appropriate or good action verb for writing the course outcome. That is to be avoided as much as possible. Knowing, able to know, able to understand, able to appreciate kind of things, because these are not as much of specific, or this is not as much of specific in terms of achievability point of view and measurability point of view. But here, that what kind of action bars that specifically you'll be talking about or you'll be fixing, that depends upon the Bloom taxonomy of different level of domain of learning. This is one good example from the strength of material subject. Apply laws of physics. Here, analyze the structural element. It's called the design, then conduct and prepare. This, if you talk about that, that kind of action parts, or in terms of outcome, that is quite achievable and also measurable. You can very well find out the student can apply. You can very well find out the student can analyze their related problems. Student can some design by following certain principle and other things, and student can conduct certain experience, or maybe that they can prepare certain reports. So these are quite measurable and achievable. So these are the some of the good action verbs, and respective teacher are supposed to follow the good action verb when they are supposed to prepare that course outcome. The last one is called that outcome, which are called the program specific outcome. A few outcome, maybe 2 to 4 outcomes, so related to the branch or specialization. That is basically, and that will be applicable while the student will be serving related industry. Okay, so for example, that particular outcomes will differ from branch to branch. Understand? For example, civil engineering department, that program specific outcomes is like that, able to analyze design building structure system. This is very specific related to that particular branch. Able to provide design solution, water supply and sewage system, very specific, and similarly other one. So few outcomes you have to mention as a part of your program specific outcome. The process of defining that program outcomes, again it starts with the mission vision, that program educational objectives, and also to be considered in developing the program outcomes, where you need to collect feedback or information from faculty, alumni of the industry, and also regulating bodies like AICTE, or maybe that NBA attributes, and also maybe the UGC and other things. And finally, that has to be summarized, and the Board of Studies and Advisory Board has to be, give you the permission, yes, it is correct, and finally, your program outcomes have to be fixed. I have already mentioned that if you talk about that outcome-based education, it has got different hierarchy, starting with the mission vision of the institute level, mission vision of the departmental level, then program educational objectives, very general in nature, then program outcomes, which is already being fixed by the NPA, that there should be the 12 graduate attributes in the form of POs, and finally the course outcome, that is called that basically achievable and measurable, which will be reflected in teaching learning practices that will be used by the respective teacher, and accordingly assessment will be done. This is a two concept mapping. Nowadays, we are talking about that one of the important aspect, the concept mapping to be used for developing certain concept. That concept is already unknown. Understand? So, in that case, outcome-based assessment is also to be explained in terms of your concept mapping. Here you will find out the three important aspects. One is called the learning outcome, another is called that teaching method, and it's called the learning assessment and unit learning. The learning outcome is basically outcome profile, from the learning outcome profile part of it, evidence or records that will give you the support that yes, learning outcome has been achieved by having proper observation or demonstration, and showing the result or evidences, and also that a kind of assessment result. And this is related to that achievement of the unit of learning, and also aims at the teaching methods by applying proper teaching methods, and that is use the assessment method, and related to the teaching method you are following the assessment methods, and finally that learning outcomes are being assessed. And also this is related to the outcome, and also related to assessment of assessment resources. I mean that what kind of assessment resources that will be utilized for assessing that outcome, and also the produce. So this is a kind of connectivity which will show that that entire outcome based assessment, how it is related to outcome, how it is related to teaching method, how it's related to achievement of the unit of learning. This is very quite obvious. This is called that step-by-step process, outcome-based education and components. First one is called the outcome-based education, then outcome-based curriculum, that outcome-based teaching and learning, and finally the outcome-based assessment, and finally that accreditation of the course. If we talk about this, so these are thus some hierarchy or the step-by-step approach which will talk about the implementation of outcome-based education system. These are the some of the point of difference between the content-based learning and outcome-based learning. Content-based learning is called the traditional or transactional approach, and outcomes-based learning is called the transformational approach. I have already defined the three broad category of that outcome-based education. That is basically called the transformational approach, and the content our present system is called the traditional or transactional approach. So that here some of the points let me highlight over here. Learners are passive, here learners are active. You will have to ensure that learners to be active, and you have to engage the learner as much as possible by following certain methodology. I'll be discussing some of the things how you can engage your student as a part of your good learning practices. The approach is exam driven. The learners assessed on the ongoing basis, or maybe the formative or the continuous basis. Critical thinking kind of things is being practiced. Rote learning is encouraged. I mean that the book is learning of thing. I mean that what is already specified in the curriculum. Beyond that, you are not supposed to practice anything. That is called the rote learning kind of thing. The syllabus content based, and here the content is integrated and learning is relevant, connected with the real life solution or real life situations or the field of work. So these are the point of difference that is quite self-explanatory, I hope. And another comparison between that content and also the outcome-based education by considering different dimensions. First dimension is called the framework. If you talk about the traditional learning approach, it talks about the predefined curriculum assessment and credentials in place. And in case of outcome-based learning, is called the curriculum instruction strategy assessment and perform standard to be decided and to be integrated. And in case of the two, that is the curriculum is already been pre-designed. Understand? And here is the curriculum and instruction is a changeable one, as and when required, depending upon the requirement. Structure ends not defined learner outcomes. I mean that in terms of competency or outcomes not specifically mentioned, but here structure support outcomes flexible and means of defining learning specific learning ends in terms of learning outcome. In terms of time, inflexibles are quite rigid, linear in nature, but in case of that particular approach, we are talking about that time as an alterable source that should match the need of educator and also the student or the learner. And as a result of that, we are talking about that even our new policy of education, we have talked about some approach of curriculum that should be the competency, flexibility approach, that multi-point entry and credit system. Understand? So that is the one of the important suggestion of the new policy of education. The curriculum should be flexible and also exit and entry should be flexible. Understand? Depending upon the pace of the student or depending upon the compatibility of the student, they can enter and exit the system and when required. And their learning credits will be, stored in a repository, and that to be utilized and when they will be joining back to the system again. And the performance standards are not being specifically mentioned. Comparative or competitive approach linked with the predetermined curve or that quota for possible success. And here, a learner's potential able receives credit for achieving the program's performance standards. It's already fixed. No quota standard is being pursued. And the last dimension is called that learning assessment and the continuous testing and permanent grading system. And here we talk about the micro P of learning and also that achievement. Not only that even the macro and micro P, both the things are to be considered for your assessment. The mistakes on permanent records, best grade and records fact and consider performance. Slow learner never catch up. It's called the slow learner, and that what I say that fast learner, kind of things. And the traditional system will not be suitable for the slow learner because there is a time constraint in case of traditional system. But in case of outcome-based system, we are talking about the mistake is quite common phenomena. Student can have mistakes, even teachers can have mistakes, and that mistakes can be rectified by proper intervention in developing or internalizing the things or demonstrating that high level of standard or performance capabilities. And never assess document or as a part of your evidences, but here achievements are to be considered by considering that appropriate evidence or maybe that appropriate proof. Bloom taxonomy, let us talk about that. Bloom taxonomy, I hope that by this time you have understood what do you mean by the Bloom. Benjamin Bloom has suggested a system of classifying that learning objectives according to the required level of skill. Okay, and that is being called as the taxonomy of Bloom or the Bloom taxonomy. And nowadays we are talking about the revised Bloom taxonomy. Initially some level was suggested. Now we are talking about the revised. So certain, higher level, certain alteration has been suggested. And if you talk about the three domains of learning as per the Bloom taxonomy, that from the different kind of pedagogical knowledge in the content, that can be categorized by considering the three major categories called the cognitive and affective and the psychomotor. Cognitive, you understand the thinking or remembering kind of things, applying that principle by solving problem. Affective means your attitude, your attitudinal orientation, your understanding, your value and ethics kind of things that will be reflected while working in a group or working in a team, or following their professional ethics or kind of professional practice in the field of work. And the psychomotor is that by using the appropriate skill that you need to demonstrate something or you need to complete something, that is called the psychomotor domain. These are the further categories in the cognitive domain. For example, if you talk about the cognitive domain, the first domain of learning, I mean the thinking or remembering kind of thing. The cognitive domain is also being subdivided into different categories. The first one is called the knowledge, repeating or verbatim or the list or the state kind of things, such that they can define it or they can state it, they can list it by applying their knowledge that have been learned through the teaching learning system. Then comprehension, demonstration, understanding in terms of the concept, explain or interpret, or the interpret or based on their understanding. And next one is called the application. They can apply the theory and apply the principle properly, able to calculate or able to solve the certain problem. Analyze, breaking things down into smaller component, and this is the higher level cognitive domain. Formulating the theoretical explanation, mathematical logics and other things. Synthesis is just creating something new by combining the element in a novel ways, formulating new things or design a new things or making or suggesting a new setup for that. And the last one is called the last stage of cognitive domain is called the evaluation. Student can evaluate, and then by applying that theory and principle, the student can evaluate what is correct. Student can take a decision which one is appropriate. Out of the solution, they can decide that which one is most appropriate, or they can determine, they can select on, and they can judge properly, and they can criticize or by applying their judgmental ability. These are called a higher level of cognitive domain. That analysis, synthesis and evaluation is called the higher level, and knowledge comprehension application is called the lower level. Basically, what most of the educational organization they are talking into, taking into consideration while fixing the question or preparing the question, that most of the time it has been observed that that particular level they are following, and accordingly they are framing the question. But if you talk about the postgraduate level or the undergraduate level, to some extent, some questions or some problem are to be given by considering the higher level of cognitive domain like analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And it has been mentioned that 4 to 6 are called the higher order thinking or HOT, and 1 to 3 is called the lower order thinking or LOTs, which are expected by the industry from the engineering graduates and related to their field of work. This is called the Bloom taxonomy and the revised one. And this is the left hand side is called the original one, and the right hand side is called the some revised. And revision is a minor revision, and you will find out that evaluation and creating is being changed. Here evaluation is the top one. Here evaluation is the last but top. Understand? and the creation is being replaced at synthesis. In place of synthesis, creation is, analysis is same, application is also same, comprehension is also, understanding is to some extent similar, and knowledge is called the remembering kind of thing. So this is called that reverse Bloom taxonomy. So you can develop your student by considering the different level of Bloom taxonomy as suggested in the form of a revised form. And accordingly, you need to demonstrate, or you need to take your class so that certain higher order skill or higher order thinking ability will be inculcated through your teaching learning system. And also you can design your assessment by considering their certain higher order thinking ability. Student can use certain higher order thinking ability while solving certain problem. Okay, so not only the certain lower level kind of questions to be fixed, and lower level kind of domain to be considered while delivering your lecture or something like that. Sometimes you have to go beyond that, particularly in case of undergraduate course and onwards. This is the same thing I'm not going to discuss. Here it has been mentioned that some of the higher order thinking skill and how that graduate attributes are mapping, okay, in terms of program outcomes. Here you will find out that apply, analysis, and evaluate. That goes without saying, these are the some of the higher order thinking as per the Bloom taxonomy, evaluation, synthesis, and analysis kind of things. Here apply, analysis, and evaluate kind of thing. So this is directly mapping with the graduate attributes. Some of the graduate attributes which reflect the higher order thinking. For example, the engineering knowledge is one such higher order thinking ability in the form of graduate attributes or in the form of a program outcomes, which talks about that application of the knowledge. Another is called the analyze, which talks about the problem analysis and taking appropriate solution or optimal utilization of the resources. This is another higher order level of Bloom taxonomy addressed to that certain program outcomes in the form of graduate attributes. And last one is called the design, development, and solution. Design development, this is called in terms of evaluate. So and directly these particular program outcomes are addressing that some of the higher order skill or higher order level of learning suggested by the Bloom taxonomy. And these are the some of the example of higher order and lower order. I don't know what is the time. Okay. Here, domain of learning talks about the higher order and lower order thinking. Sometimes how we can fix that, or address the higher order learning and lower order learning. That if we talk about the cognitive domain of thinking levels, the lower order levels thinking example of knowledge, comprehension, and application. But in case of the same level, cognitive level, if you talk about the higher order thinking ability, that reflects that analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, that highest level of your Bloom taxonomy. Similarly, if you talk about that, this is cognitive domain. Similarly, if you talk about the affective domain, and finally the psychomotor domain. Affective domain, you can always find out that lower order thinking changes, receiving and responding, and as well as you can find out or you can address certain higher order thinking also, like changes in terms of valuing, judging, assessing, organizing, or maybe the characterizing. These are the some of the things related to the affective domain. If you talk about the higher order level and also that lower order level. The first one talks about the cognitive domain. Okay, I mean that in terms of also the lower order thinking and also the higher order thinking. Both the things can be put together, or you can really practice both the things, not only always that lower order thinking level that teachers should demonstrate or the student will develop the knowledge. Another one is that lower order thinking. If you talk about the cognitive domain, that's similar one. Knowledge level, if you talk about that, define and practice, define the particles or express or describe kind of things. That is called the knowledge level. And also the comprehension level means that distinguish or maybe differentiate particle from a rigid body. For example, this is to judge the comprehension level of the student as a part of your cognitive domain, and finally the application, also part of your cognitive domain. Given the initial velocity, find the trajectory of a projectile. So this is that called the application level, where certain things you have given, certain information given, and rest of the information or rest of the kind of things student has to select and student has to solve it. This is called that again three domains of learning related to the cognitive level. I mean the two domains of learning, that higher order and lower order, by considering the knowledge comprehension and application. This again that further level of Bloom taxonomy, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation level, directly related to the higher order thinking. Sketch the necessary free body diagram. Okay, as basically your understanding will be reflected whether you are able to sketch it perfectly as per the guidance or as per the norms or as per the what I say that conditions. Next one is called the synthesis. Determine the required friction coefficient for a given motion that reflect the synthesis aspect of the student, and accordingly some question to be asked, and accordingly you need to assess such that that particular thing has been reflected from the student while applying their principle or theory in the form of a synthesis. And finally evaluate. That is nothing but the comparison, choose the best solution out of the many solution on a particular problem, and you have to justify why you have selected that particular solution compared to other solution. So on this reflect that evaluation portion as a part of your higher order thinking in the cognitive domain. Here it has been mentioned that we are talking about that Washington Accord is called the genesis for having that kind of international level of standard from the graduate student or engineering graduates. And nowadays we are following that NBA guidelines or NBA parameter in line with the Washington Accord. And you will find out the Washington Accord is nothing but is an international agreement between bodies responsible for accrediting engineering programs or engineering degree programs that was established in 1989. Okay, and you will find out that one-to-one mapping in case of Washington Accord, what they have suggested in terms of standard of engineering graduates produced by the different engineering college or technical institutions in terms of Washington Accord, and also in terms of the NBA programs. The engineering knowledge here, they have suggested the same thing NBA guidelines we are talking about the engineering knowledge. Then another point is called that problem analysis, that our NBA program outcomes, we are also addressing the program problem analysis. Okay, so that is one-to-one mapping in line with that suggestion of the Washington Accord, and NBA has accepted into I mean that same thing. I think that by this time you have already having certain understanding how to map in terms of your POs, and also by following certain measurement tools like direct tool and indirect tools, POs in terms of the graduate attributes, and assessment tools are being reflected, how we can measure the or assess that whether the program assessment objectives are being achieved or not. So this is a kind of matrix which will help to find out or select that what kind of assessment tool that will be using related to the specific program outcome or program objectives, and the course assessment tool. Now here it has been mentioned that some of the direct tool to be used for achieving certain program graduate attributes in the form of a program outcome, and certain indirect tools also to be used for achieving that kind of program outcome in the form of assessment. Now direct tool refers that test, assignment, that traditional things normally teachers used to practice in their class. a seminar, industrial training projects, and also following the rubrics. Rubrics is a very important aspect. You understand that in terms of pedagogical issues, rubrics is basically the kind of guidelines which will help the teachers to evaluate the student properly based on certain criteria, kind of standard. Okay, if you develop a rubric-based tool, definitely that marking or your assessment will be proper. Okay, so these are called some of the direct tools, and also suggest certain kind of indirect tools. For example, course and survey, exit survey, the faculty survey, and survey from the alumni, and program statistics. The course exit survey means that that a student are leaving the institute, and you are asking certain kind of question as a part of your exit course and survey in the form of a exit survey. This is similar, understand, at the end of a particular course, that you are conducting certain interview, asking certain questions, structured question, and you are trying to match whether the learning outcomes are being achieved or not. What is the student opinion? Similar kind of things you can also do in the form of a survey is called the exit survey, when finally the student will be leaving the institute. And course means that at the end of a particular semester, or maybe at the end of a particular subject. And similarly, the faculty survey, after implementing that, outcome-based curriculum philosophy, what is the opinion of the faculty? Okay, whether it is good, or that whether the system is properly aligned in terms of your outcome-based education philosophy or not. So that can be surveyed. And finally, the alumni survey, and also program statistics. The program statistics mean how many of the students are being placed in different industries. That gives you that kind of mm, uh, gives you the opportunity to rethink once again whether the courses are directly related to achievement of the outcomes or not. If it is related to the outcome, definitely you will find out the most of the industries are being placed in the relevant industry. So these are the some of the mapping. If we talk about the related to the graduate attributes and in line with certain direct and indirect assessment tool. As already mentioned, two models of curriculum are suggested by that, which will be implemented in outcome-based education, model A and model B. The model A talks about that content base, another is called that outcome base. Teaching is delivery on content, assessment is seeing the content has been learned or not, and here outcome based assessment is being seen the these outcomes have been achieved or not. So these are the two important modes of curriculum normally used to refer, and obviously the model 2 is basically suggested which will be suitable for implementing the outcome based education. And comparison of planning. If we talk about the curriculum planning with the model A, plan for the curriculum, plan the curriculum to be taught based on the things that will be used by the teachers, and accordingly the teachers are supposed to teach the student based on the suggestion of the curriculum, teach the course, and finally give the feedback to the student on their work, assess that what the student they have learned based on your traditional assessment methodology. And on the contrary, that curriculum planning with respect to model B talks about the plan the course, same the learning outcome based on the learning outcome, and ensure the learning outcomes are accessible or achievable, determine what student activities will help the student to attain these outcomes. That you have to fix the criteria norms, provide the resources and support for the student such that their learning activities will be taken place, and finally student will be achieve their learning outcome. Assess the student they have attained the learning or the course outcome or not, review the student their result, and change their teaching and assessment and other practices in line with the requirement, in line or the requirement of the outcomes, in line with the suggestions given by the student or also the industry. This is another comparison for model A and model B. The model is A is basically plan content, but model B talks about the plans, the learning outcome. I mean that goes without saying. The model A talks about that in a content-oriented syllabus or curriculum, but model B talks about that outcome-oriented curriculum on the syllabus, and ensure that that they are accessible or measurable, that whatever learning outcome you are suggesting, and you need to ensure that they should be measured, and you can assess it properly, and plan your learning activities so that you can try to achieve the outcome, and accordingly you design your I mean put the content of the curriculum. Understand? Well, this is the model B. Similarly, model A talks about the T's basically based on the content, but here model B talks about the support and resources for the student mastery learning. Okay, I mean in terms of with requirement of the outcome. Give feedback, and here ensure student receive feedback also from the teacher, also from other stakeholders. And here the last one is called the assess your normal assessment. Most of the cases here for scientific assessment will be given due weightage, but here we are talking about the assessment in different form as in one record, but more precisely that in a formative type of assessment by following direct or indirect tool to be used to assess the outcome or achievement of the outcome on the student. And this is basically, let me give some idea that assessment of outcome is. Assessment is basically useful for ensuring yourself that you are continuously improving, and that talks about that maintaining the minimum standard of quality in line with the statutory organization in case of that quality standard to be defined by that maybe the 10B, or maybe that other accrediting agency like ISO 9000, or maybe the some other accrediting bodies in case of educational institution. Accreditation from the external evaluation, this is also to be done. Assessment is basically done to promote the competitiveness of the student, such that they should be develop certain kind of competitive mindset, and they will be successful in the competitive environment or competitive situation. The assessment will help the student to push them in the industry, and also assessment will help to select the appropriate learning and so learning strategies. These are the some of the development in line with the outcome-based education, some developmental aspect of that assessment over the years. That during 1980s, we are talking about that how well our students are learning, how effectively the teachers are also teaching in line with the content that is being prescribed in the syllabus. After that, we are talking with the assessment movement in 1990s. The list of basic competencies we are talking about, that identification of the basic competencies required for major graduation on a particular field, and based on that particular competency, your assessment has to be done. You understand that in vocational level, that National Skill Development Initiative and National Skill Development Corporation has already been set up, and that assessment body has already been set up for the vocational courses, that is called the National Testing Agencies. Understand? In case of, I hope that you are also conducting certain courses, MOOC courses under the SWAYAM platform, or maybe that MHRD or Ministry of Education platform, and the assessment is basically done not by you. The assessment is basically done by the national testing agencies. But that how what are the questions that to be fixed, that to be given by you. Most of the times, multiple choice type of questions. Okay, so these are the some of the development in terms of the assessment. The second one is very important, has already been implemented in vocational education system. And that entire vocational education system is basically identification of the competencies, and at the end, whether competencies or even number of competencies are being attained or not, that have to be assessed. And if you say that, yeah, most of the competencies are being attained by the student, definitely they will be suitable, and they will be used by the, and they will be absorbed in the relevant industry. And now we are talking about the paradigm shift. I mean, the entire spectrum is being changed. So, what the education system is for in the form of education reforms, that we are talking about the outcomes rather than what I say that output, or is called that outcome oriented education. And also new accreditation criteria we have already fixed that. As per that accreditation board of engineering and technology USA ABET, some new guidelines has already been fixed, and basically based on that we are also following certain kind of accreditation criteria based on that NBU philosophy, or maybe there's some other accrediting bodies like ISO 9000 and others. These are the some of the things I'm not going to discuss. Let me this is called the outcome driven assessment, basically measurement of change or outcome, and that has been taking place on strategic action implemented in pursuit with the achieving the predetermined objective in the form of the outcome. Results are used in the support of future change and also continuous improvement. These are some of the things. This is the assessment state. It is quite obvious that you can find out any book if you talk about the outcome-based assessment process. It's called the cyclic process. The first step is to describe the result, then identify the data required and also source. Then third is called the review the existing assessment tools. Then number 4 is called the define the additional methods which will be suitable for the outcome-based education or to judge the outcomes of the student. Number 5 is called the implement and evaluate it, and finally you can administer it. So this is a continuous process or continuous improvement process so where the assessment is concerned. These are the different purpose. If we talk about the assessment, to be considered by identifying the overall goal or broad goals. Identify assessment to be integrated in terms of objectives, specifically COs, which are measurable and achievable, and also the outcomes which are expected in line with fulfilling the requirement of the industry or the stakeholders. And use your appropriate tool, maybe the direct or your indirect tool, some of the traditional tool, or maybe some of the more advanced tools we are suggesting. And finally review the tools and their utility or their usefulness, and finally go on continuous improvement. This is a evaluation cycle, kind of 2-loop cycle. You will find out this is one loop, another is another loop. The 2-loop has got, basically the second loop talks about that more, integrated loop so that the assessment is concerned rather than the first loop. Objectives and outcome. You need to understand what do you mean by objective and what do you mean by outcome. Objectives is the first and most important set in the course development, and it affects the content and instruction assessment. Effective way of communicating, expecting the student. Objectives developed to measurable outcomes from the basis of creating assignment or by appearing there in the examination, or also by involvement in completion of certain projects. Example of objectives, these are the objectives. Again, objectives to be measurable and achievable, you'll have to think about or you'll have to select in that way. But outcomes, these are the outcomes compared to the similar kind of things. The same things is being converted in terms of your outcome. Outcome is more specific and kind of action oriented or demonstration oriented kind of things, or even kind of some knowledge to be applied for solving certain kind of problem. These are the some of the examples of the outcome. Here is sometimes that understand and know that it has been mentioned over here that it has been mentioned that not measurable. If you fix outcome in the form of such statement like understand the concept of conversion of mass and energy, that depend upon the student and their kind of perception, that will differ, understand. So you cannot really measure in on a fixed point of view. Okay, so that's why it is advised that do not put that use or action verb understand. And even another one is called the know, how to use the first law of thermodynamics. Know means that again the knowing is also different student in different perspective or different kind of way they can understand, or they can perceive it, understand. That is also not measurable. The understand is all not but here obtain or select, that has been used as a part of your outcome, that is quite fixed and measurable and observable one. Assessment, if we talk about the program assessment and also classroom assessment or the course assessment, program assessment talks about that standard of exam locally developed on state and in line with the statutory organization with their norms and rules to be followed. Most of the cases, the summative evaluation or summative assessment. We talk about the competency based assessment. Some stone course like that assessment to be done specifically to measure that whether the competencies are being achieved or not. Understand? I mean, again, direct and indirect methodology can really apply. And another is called the attitude and perception that may be assessed by conducting survey or maybe the interview or by focus group discussion kind of things. And the class level or classroom level assessment is basically done performance evaluation, oral presentation, written project, viva, teamwork, laboratory, and other things. Classroom assessment techniques like a minute paper, the background, or asking certain probing questions, or by helping to develop certain concept maps so that they can understand or they can represent the whole things in a diagram. I mean the graphical or diagrammatically, okay, so that they can understand that kind of thing. So these are the two different level of assessment: program and course level. On this and only tool to be used, employer survey, that you can conduct the employer survey where the student are being engaged, survey from the alumni, faculty survey, those who are associated in teaching learning directly, that you can conduct a certain survey and asking certain opinion from them. An exit survey means that when the student will be passing out, you will be asking certain question whether the outcome that was talking about in your curriculum that has been achieved or not. And dropout survey. Dropout is very essential. Sometimes on the student you will find out that everywhere in a final exam there will be certain dropouts or some category of student. So you can conduct the survey for the dropout student, and they can find out that, or they can specifically mention what are the problems they are facing, and that can be integrated to change your outcome if possible, or also change your teaching learning method. Course level assessment, instructor classification, evaluation, or presentation, project report, lab report, and scoring like of in the form of a rubrics by putting the appropriate level and assessing the student performance based on that particular rubrics of the scale. Yeah, let me talk about that. Outcome-based learning. Learning defines the objective or outcome while designing the learning plans for users. Understand? The learning should address that outcomes that is being fixed or that is being highlighted in your curriculum, and that will have certain kind of common attributes of the based on the outcome-based philosophy. It should be result-oriented. uh, at the end of that your teaching learning session, that you can able to judge the result of your session. Objective based for the project, resource skill level and focused, build specific implementation goal, and we should address the specific requirement. Quantitative and measurable, your learning should be quantitative and measurable at the end of your session. Maybe mixed board like your mode learning, your formal or maybe the social, or maybe the on the job. On the job means that when the student will be working and whether they will be learning something as a part of your coursework. These are the some of the framework: learning outcome, teaching and learning methodology, evidence you need to collect, the proof of that whether learning has been taken place, appropriate analysis in the form of data analysis, and finally enhancement of
Am I
learning.
audible, sir?
Yes, please. I need to finish.
Dr. Sukant, sir?
Yes,
Can you
I
hear my
need to.
voice?
Yes. Yes, I am audible. Am I audible? No.
Your voice is not audible, sir.
Oh. Now it is okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is called that outcome-based learning framework, which talks about that identification of the outcome, then integrating the teaching learning system based on the outcome, and collecting the necessary evidence that where learning is being taken place or not, both in quality and quantitative issues, and making necessary analysis of the data that will be collected as a part of your assessment. And finally, you suggest that how that enhancement of learning will take place in future. So this is called the outcome-based learning. Yeah, let me talk about the just last few minutes. Talk about the some specific learning strategies. Normally, we can suggest as a part of your outcome-based education, suitable for achieving the outcomes. Basically, that outcome, kind of learning strategy is being referred as a active learning strategy. Okay, and it's called that active learning strategy. Active learning strategy means the student will be actively learning. Initially, some of the traditional learning methodology is basically based on that, passive learning kind of thing, whether they have learned something or you do not have any kind of, kind of check and balance. But here, that any kind of learning strategy that will be suggested as a part of your outcome-based education and teaching learning system is basically based on the philosophy of active learning philosophy or proposition. As it has mentioned that is just opposite to the passive learning, or because by simply addressing or ensuring that something to be memorized and something to be assimilated by them, and that is the purpose of your passive learning. But active learning talks about that put the student responsible of their own learning at the hand of the learners themselves. So you have to design your learning accordingly. And in that case, active learning, normally the teacher's role to be considered as a facilitator. Teacher's role to be considered as a facilitator. Understand? And not exactly the teacher. The facilitator, if you talk about that role, is something beyond teaching. Understand? Teachers sometimes to act as a guide or even the mentor. Okay, by providing that appropriate learning opportunity or learning experience from the student suitability point of view. Uh, one such approach, suggested approach, is called the competency-based learning. As many organizations or many states, they have applied this particular competency-based learning approach as a part of your outcome-based education, which is basically specifically focused on identified competencies, and to develop that competency, what are the learning approaches that to be practiced by the teacher. This is basically based on that. And here it has been talked about you understand the competency is basically that kind of cluster of knowledge, skill and attitude, and which will be reflected by the student when they will be working in the field of work. Okay, so that type of things to be integrated in the teaching system, and teachers need to practice that sort of things. Here, the acquisition of knowledge, the development of skill and establishment of proper habit or in the form of attitude to be ensured. That and your competency-based learning represent a set of strategy to achieve that particular thing, whether the competencies are achieved or not. And through assessment tools such as rubrics and other tools, learner competencies are to be assessed properly by following. Rubric is one of the suggested tool for such purpose, that you can really assess whether that student are achieve that level of competency or not. Thinking based learning is called that to develop that whether thinking abilities are being developed with the student, to show student how to work with the information they receive and during their teaching kind of thing. So there's a thing of developing the thinking ability kind of the through your teaching learning process. Teach them to contextualize, analyze, relate, or argue in short, or convert the information to knowledge by indulging them by practicing their thinking ability. This is the goal of thinking-based learning, where they're developing thinking skill to be inculcated through your teaching learning process demonstrated by the teacher or the facilitator. Design thinking. This is also very innovative kind of learning strategy. Sometimes we are suggesting that to follow as a part of your outcome-based education. It talks about that unique method of solving problem and also satisfy the need of the clients by taking certain innovativeness or calling certain creativeness of student, which are being reflected in the learning method and which will be used by the student in the field of work. Problem-based learning is also very popular. A lot of courses are being designed based on that problem-based learning, where you can say that a cyclic learning process composed of many different strategies, starting with the asking question or probing question and asking, acquiring the knowledge that is in turn leads to more questions that student will be developed in a growing complexity of cycle, or maybe the complex developing the complex inquiry or complex what I say that putting the complex type of question. I mean that to understand the depth knowledge related to the subject. Putting this methodology into practice does not really mean exercise of inquiry by student, but convert it into useful data or information. And according to several educators, some of the advantages of this particular problem-based learning talks about the development of critical thinking ability or creative application of creative skill from the student point of view, the improvement of problem-solving abilities, and following the step-by-step methods for problem solving, increase student motivation. Obviously, if the students are encouraged to apply their own methodology or to apply their own skill and knowledge to solve certain problems, definitely student will be motivated. And with that knowledge sharing in the challenging situation, obviously as a part of your different type of complex problem been given, and that gives you that opportunity to face certain kind of challenge, and the student can take it as a challenge to solve that particular problem. Cooperative line and the group, when that some student will be working in a group and some common task will be given, that should be considered as a group learning, and each student will be given their separate responsibility as a part of that particular group exercise, and teachers are supposed to judge it whether the student are taking that appropriate responsibility or taking the proper interest for working in a group. That is called that group learning kind of things. Most of the cases in laboratory experiments where the student can demonstrate whether the cooperative learning is being taken place, and the teacher can assess that whether that while completing a particular project or maybe that particular test or the experiment, okay, some group of students are put together, and whether they are cooperating each other, they are discussing each other, they are sharing their ideas, and the task is being divided by them or not. Okay, is in that way that cooperative learning is basically taking place. It helps that improve the attention, involvement, and acquisition of knowledge by the student. Obviously, 3 to 6 group of people is the ideal group size. The specific role to reach the objective is necessary, and through interaction and discussion and work in a coordinated manner, that is being possible to achieve. Project-based learning is called like your problem-based learning. Sometimes we are talking about the project-based learning, which allow the student to acquire new knowledge and skill through development of project that respond to the real life problem or a problem related to the real life situation, and the student ability to retain the knowledge as well as the opportunity to develop complex competencies such as critical thinking, communication, and collaborative kind of things in case of any solving problem related to the project, or by involving that for completing certain kind of project. Flipped classroom is a kind of modern, basically lower level, school level. Most of the times we are using, or even management classes, we are using the flipped classroom kind of things, where the primary educational materials are being studied by the student at home, and then they work in the classroom with the guidance of the respective teacher. this kind of reverse methodology. The primary materials are being provided to the supplied to the student, and the student can learn it, and the student can go through it, and during your class that will be discussed at length with the guidance of the teacher, so that they can develop appropriate knowledge and skill. The main objective of this methodology to optimize the time or utilize the time in an optimal way in a class and dedicating it, for example, to meet the special need for each individual. Sometimes okay, some student may not be able to understand properly, but some of the student have understood properly. So in that way you can address that weaker student or slow learner, okay, with that particular point of time, and also develop cooperative project and work on specific task. Jigsaw technique is also another technique as a part of your active learning strategy. Is called the ensure active participation and collaborative learning. In this approach, learners are given a piece of puzzle. This is sometimes called that game, or maybe there's certain kind of what is that? Certain specific tools, normally management tools. Sometimes used to certain piece of puzzles, and they need to solve that particular puzzle, and after this, they need to collaborate with other learners to finally complete the entire puzzles. Okay, so this is that shows that kind of collaborating, how the students are collaborating or interacting together and helping each other in a constructive way to complete their project or complete their learning. Learning by teaching, that is, give some responsibility of teaching on some of the part of your curriculum, or that maybe that, or some of the part of your lesson, if not the whole lesson. Some good student allow them to teach, understand, and you as a teacher just follow. Also, let the other student to interact with the student who is demonstrating or taking the class. This is called the learning by teaching, and in that way you will ensure that that the student who is teaching, he is also learning, and the other fellow colleagues or the other fellow students, they are also learning, and teachers are considered as a expert or maybe the facilitator, and also to be considered as a moderator. Role playing, you understand that some real life situation will be replicated in your classroom, and different roles have to be identified, and the student is supposed to act it as per the requirement. Understand, most of the management classes, the role playing are being taken. For example, that how to satisfy the customer. Some people are to be considered as a supplier, and some student to be considered as a customer. Understand, and something they want to receive from the seller, and that entire role has to be represented by the different student, and how well they can perform that particular role. That shows that your involvement, and also applying your specific skill, how to attract the customer, how to satisfy the customers. Okay, so these are the some kind of real life situation has been replicated in your classroom, and also some simulations or kind of things, like customer interactions kind of things, in that way that role playing is maybe that ideal teaching learning methodology for a specific purpose. Okay, so the student can achieve certain outcome. Mind mapping and brainstorming, this is a very famous one, and nowadays very popular. Brainstorming, it is that within a short period of time, it is expected that number of ideas to be developed on a particular issue or particular problem by conducting the brainstorming session. And while conducting the brainstorming session, you understand there should be certain norms to be adhered or to be followed. Okay, it's not like a meeting. Meeting sometimes ends with no result, but brainstorming session talks about that. You follow that rules and regulation, definitely it will give, or it will generate a number of ideas, and you as a decision maker, you can take that appropriate decision related to the problem. Similarly, mind mapping is also the similar mechanism. The mind mapping on a particular problem, certain ideas are given, and that is being mapped in a pictorial form, and that will give the entire picture, and that can be visualized, and as a kind of decision maker, you can take a decision based on that mind mapping process. Fishbowl technique is also another aspect that is also used, particularly in school education, also in higher education also, where that a student are separated into an inner or outer cycle, a whole lot of students. The inner circle or the fishbowl, the student have a discussion, and the other student, including the teachers, they are supposed to other circle, they are supposed to listen and to take part in a discussion effectively, such that and proper appropriate learning will take place. In the kind of mutual sharing the ideas or discussing the ideas, appropriate learning will take place. That is called the fishbowl kind of technique. By engaging each of the student for attending or to a particular class or to a lesson, lesson, that normally the fishbowl technique is being used. And you'll find out this is kind of arrangement. These are the student or even the some of the experts, they will be considered in inner circle. They will be discussing the topic, and other student sitting in a particular fashion in a different concentric circle form. They are supposed to listen properly, and also they will interact. Okay, for having the proper understanding. Okay, this is for the feed. This one. Inquiry-based learning, something that develop certain kind of capability that student can develop certain kind of inquiry-based or inquisitiveness. Understand? Okay, some information you have given, other information not given. That student always try to collect some other information or advanced information. So that type of learning strategy is basically the inquiry-based learning strategy. And you will find out that investigating and open question or by asking certain problem or something like that, inquiry-based learning is being taken place. And also general curiosity into the realm of critical thinking and understanding will be developed as a part of your inquiry-based learning. And there are 5 E approaches in the inquiry-based learning normally being approached. You engage the student, you explore the possibility on a particular solution, you explain the student, then elaborate if it is required, then evaluate which one is correct. So in that cyclic process, that student are supposed to be engaged as a part of your inquiry-based model. Okay, this is the model of inquiry-based learning. And finally, I will conclude with my session with some idea how the rubric can help to evaluate the student in a specific manner. Rubric, you understand, in educational or pedagogical issues normally called the blueprint or the rubric, is an evaluation tool that divides the designated task or assignment into the component parts, and continues to provide a clear description of the features of the work associated with the each component that varies level of the performance required. And rubrics can be served as a grading guide for instructor or the teacher to enhance the student learning by proving clear formative or feedback or student timely in a compact way. Now here, this is the example of a rubric, essential part of a rubric. For example, you will find out that these are the scale. Okay, these are the scale. On the scale of different format, you can use 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 grading. 0 means fail, and 4 means excellent. You can put A, B, C, D, F, where A is excellent and F is fail, and in between good, satisfactory, and marginal. And also you can put marks, for example, 10, 8, 6, 4, and 0. Okay, so depending upon your purpose and suitability for your assessment, you can select the scale accordingly. And you will find out that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-point scale. Sometimes you can select the 9-point scale or even 3-point scale. Likert scale is the popular scale for this particular purpose. You can use the Likert scale for grading system. And you will find out these are called the descriptors. These are the descriptor, and these are the called the expectation or the criteria based on which your student will be evaluated. And for example, if you ask what is your name, okay, that to be put over here. Okay, what is your name? Sometimes I can say that SK Naskar, for example. Somebody can say my name is Sukant Kumar Naskar. Okay, and sometimes I can say that my name is Dr. SK Naskar. Sometimes I can say that my name is Dr. Sukant Kumar Naskar. Or somebody can call me as a Naskar. My name is Naskar, kind of things. Nickname kind of things. So depending upon your answer, you will have to prepare your skill and accordingly you will have to give your marks. For example, if I give you the answer against that what is your name, if I give the answer Naskar, that means that you can give that a minimum number as much as possible. If I can give you the answer, my name is Dr. Sukanta Kumar Naskar, the full marks you can give it. Okay, that is excellent. Or if I ask you that my name is SK Naskar, and in between you can give it. So in that way, you can develop that particular rubrics, and that will be helpful to assist the student in terms of different, outcomes that you are expecting as a part of your outcome-based education. And you'll find out that nowadays various softwares are available to generate rubrics on a specific subject, and you can develop it. And in ITPTL Kolkata, we have conducted certain mentor training programs last week as a part of your NITTT, National Institute of Technical Teachers Training Initiative of AICTE and Ministry of Education, where the evaluation of the mentors is basically done based on the rubric for each courses. There were 8 module courses, and each module some rubrics has been suggested by the module developer, and that is being used for assessing the performance of the inducted teacher, and finally that will be used by the mentors. So with this, that's all from my side. So with the basic understanding regarding the overview of outcome-based education and also assessment part of it, and finally the learning strategy that will be suitably applied for implementing that outcome-based education. With this, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your detailed presentation and very relevant talk on outcome-based learning and approach. Right. So I will, if you can take 1 or 2 questions from the participant, because we are running out of time. Yeah. So we'll ask our participant if they have any questions. So we'll take few. Yes, sir.
Okay. Also, I'm just putting my phone number and email in the chat box.
I will also share with them if okay, and if they have any questions, they can directly mail to you. And yes. I also request the participant, if they want to ask any questions, they can put it in the chat box, or else we can close the session, and I will request the participant to write the questions and send to me, so that I can also forward to you. Is it okay, sir?
Yes, it's fine, no problem.
Okay. So thank you so much, sir, for sparing your valuable time with us. And
thank you.
And it is a honor for us to get the knowledge from you, as you are very expertise in this outcome-based learning and approach education system. So I think it will be helpful to our participant. And thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my experience in this good platform that AICTE supported FDP program, and also interacting or maybe that sharing my idea with that valued participants throughout the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And I have already given my the email or ID. At any point of time, you can contact
yes.
me.
Yes. Even if I have your mail ID, so that sure. I can also tell them if they have any questions.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Professor Behera.